Hello, everybody. My name is Oliver Bash, joined alongside by none other than Pyro J, and this is the Rocket League Esports.net show. A show focusing on all things Rocket League and why we love the game so much. And Pyro, we've been going through a lot of the basics of Rocket League over the last couple of weeks, introducing people to the game itself. So why don't we introduce them to the cars that actually are within the game? It is the best cars in Rocket League. That is what we are focusing on the show here today. And honestly, this is an interesting topic because this isn't necessarily one where there's a definitive answer. This is kind of coming down to, how do you feel about the Rocket League cars?
Yeah, and you know what? It's evolved over the years as well. So it's been interesting, you and I as veterans of the game, to see it change over time. One thing you need to know, while there are dozens and dozens and dozens of vehicles in the games and partnerships with actual real cars like the Ford F-150 or the BMW, there's only 6 hitboxes. They all kind of fit in these cookie cutter rectangles that actually will physically hit the ball in the engine. Those hitboxes are Octane, Breakout, Plank, Merc, Dominus, and Hybrid. Those 6 bass. Call it a couple that you think are worth mentioning more about.
Well, I think that pretty much all of those are going to be pretty large things, but I think the big thing to think about when it comes to all of those different hitboxes is that they are completely different. The way that Rocket League has worked is that it has taken a lot of different cars, like you said, even things like the Honda Civic, but they got to fit that into a hitbox. Well, they will be able to design it in whatever way that they want. A couple years ago, I think basically transitioning from what was the initial game from SARP is where they decided to basically sort of standardize those hitboxes. Like you said, there's about 6 different ones that you can use, but every single one of those is going to have its differences between them. Good example being the Merc. It's the tallest hitbox by a long mile. So if you're looking to try and take what are called 50-50s where you need another car, it can make it a little bit easier for you to be able to overpower your opponents, especially at a lower rank when you're getting into the game. So again, there are multiple different options. There's a lot of different cars within this game, but the standardization of the hitboxes has made it to where you can kind of run whatever car you want, and it's still going to feel like another car that's within the game.
Yeah, and listen, like you said, the changes have to be prominent. They have to be noticed because you can get a hitbox that is the shortest thing ever and it gets these massive flicks. It will send the ball to the ceiling, or the tall one. You mentioned the Merc. There is like a literal minivan in the game called the Nomad that just is the most atrocious build in the game, but it is a true monster. It is a menace. And if you want to be the tallest car in the game, you can be that. So there's all kinds of options. There's all different hitboxes, but that's why we've talked about that and the different hitboxes. I think we've got to transition into which one is the best hitbox in Rocket League.
So the best hitbox in Rocket League, not even really arguably at this point, is going to be the Octane. And this is for a number of reasons. While it is probably the easiest card to be able to understand at its base mechanic, if you look at the hitbox, it is basically just a rectangle, and a very standardized rectangle in comparison to a lot of other things. On top of that, it's just the most popular. Whether it is professional play, casual players alike, pretty much everybody uses the Octane in one way or another. Now, the crazy thing about the Octane, though, is that it's kind of been one of these things where it's been popular for a long time, but it's had its ebbs and flows. And while other cars have emerged and appear in popularity and fallen off, good example being the Batmobile, which used a hybrid hitbox and was, you got to remember that used to be a very popular car, and then it kind of just died off. Whereas the Octane has been around for forever. It has continually been what has been the most prominent hitbox in all of Rocket League, and for a number of reasons at this point. So shout out to the Octane, honestly. It really is one of the most tried and true hitboxes in all of Rocket League history.
Yeah, listen, it's a balanced hitbox, okay? I think it has the second tallest hitbox in the game. That's really important for 50-50s when you're trying to get the better of an opponent who's hitting the ball at the same time. But it also has like an above average width, so you can get some strong flicks, some easier dribbling maybe with that hitbox as well. So there's plenty of reasons why that Octane is truly the best hitbox. But that doesn't necessarily mean that maybe it's a hitbox you should choose. So, Bats, let's talk a little bit about which hitbox is right for you.
Now, if you've been paying attention to the professional scene, like we said, as much as the Octane has been by far the most popular, it's really coming down to one of two options if you want to stick with the Octane. Granted, there are actually a lot of cars that use the Octane hitbox. What we talked about before, the Honda Civic even using the Octane hitbox at a certain point. But the main two that most people seem to refer to is going to be the Fennec or the Octane. For years, I would say the Dominus was also basically the second option there, but we'll get into the Dominus in a little while here. While sticking on to the Octane and sticking on to what you should pick, it feels like if you're a beginner coming into this game, if you're trying to learn this game, by far the easiest hitbox for you is going to be the Octane. But at the same time, I remember getting into this game, I didn't use the Octane. I used the Takumi. You can kind of use whatever you want. Heck, I even know Boyo Royo, an actual RLCS caster, a man who has an in-game tag, only uses the Scarab. And if you know what the Scarab is, you know why that is an absolute disgrace. But at the same time, it is his option. You can basically use whichever one you want, even if there are necessarily, more popular picks like the Fennec, like the Octane, like the Dominus.
Gotta take a second to call out the people that are made in the Scarab, though. I mean, come on, I get the phrase, to beat the ball, you gotta be the ball. I mean, the Scarab literally is a ball with these weird protruding wheels, but I am a man that deserves criticism as well. While I do use the Octane hitbox, I don't use the Octane or the Fennec. I use the Harbinger. It came out in Season 1 of Free to Play, and it's that car that you actually see, Bass, when you select the 1v1 game mode. It's right there, and it's actually form-fitting of the hitbox. It still gets good flicks. It's great for dribbling. Not a lot of people on the Harbinger hype, Bass, but I'm here to spit the truth.
Listen, the truth changes. It ebbs and flows. Like we said, the Fennec was not always the #1 hitbox for the Octane, and while it is starting to overtake the Octane itself, the Octane hitbox, a lot of that is due to just kind of following trends. Shawset45, one of the most popular professional players in the history of Rocket League, is kind of the guy who pioneered this in the first place. When it came out all the way back in July 2019, he was one of the first people to really use it at a professional scene, and with that became the popularity of the hitbox, or excuse me, of the Fennec itself, and slowly more people started to jump onto it. So much so that, as much as we do make fun of it being, quote unquote, the French Fennec because of the fact that Chaussette was the one who established it, it kind of got overtaken by, I would say, the Middle Eastern Fennec. That was kind of what became the newer version of it. So it's like, there's a lot of versions of the Fennec that come out. Granted, I will say you're not going to see a lot of those at a lower rank because a lot of people decide to decorate their cars in other ways, but at the same time, an Octane is an Octane, a hitbox is a hitbox. And speaking of hitboxes, we do have to talk about what is the second favorite hitbox in all of Rocket League, the Dominus.
So the second favorite hitbox in Rocket League, the Dominus. It's true. We heard Bass talk about the French Fennec, Shawset45, making it popular. If we're going to talk about pros, we got to talk about gimmick, okay? Use the Dominus in the RLCS Season 6 Championship. He mastered that vehicle. It's got the long hitbox, great for flicks, as I was saying earlier. Maybe a little less reliable on the 50-50s, but if you can coordinate that car, Bass, to dodge right into the ball with the corner of it, I can't think of another hitbox that hits the ball with that amount of power.
It really is one of these things where it was popular for a very good reason. While, again, there are disadvantages due to it being a little bit shorter than maybe some of the other hitboxes, it is extremely viable. So viable that we've seen teams win world championships with it. Cloud9 in Season 6 of RLCS actually did have a player on the team using the Dominus, like we said. And this was taking down one of the greatest dynasties in all of Rocket League history. So it goes to show you that no matter what hitbox you are using, you truly can kind of stand out. You mentioned using the Harbinger. There's even weirder cars being used in professional plays nowadays. Huge shout out to A Zapatos. He is one of the more up-and-coming 1v1 players in all of Rocket League, and I've been watching this guy since he was a bubble player, a guy who's playing in semi-professional tournaments, just trying to make a name for himself. And honestly, his legend only grew from there because he was the only really solid player using what is called the Sentio. It uses the plank hitbox. It is about as flat as you can get, but there's kind of good reason for it. This kid's got flicks more powerful than Mike Tyson throwing a punch. It is ridiculous the amount of just velocity he can form because of the fact that he uses a shorter and longer hitbox.
Listen, I get the hype around the Sentio, but you also got to remember every single Rocket League season, there's a new car. So there's these cars in the past that are finding popularity, but there's also maybe a new car that you could help bring into popularity. We've seen the Nomad that I've talked about. Last season had the Honda Civic. This one's got the Emperor. There's no hype around the Emperor. That car's kind of Don't use the Emperor. But maybe next season it's gonna be amazing, right, Bass? So you never know when the next best thing is gonna hit the shop. I just opened a drop today, Bass, and I got the Jaeger 619, and I won 3 competitive games in a row. So I'm just saying, you never know what vehicle is gonna fit the bill for you.
Well, we're going to have to find out real soon because we're actually getting towards the end of the Rocket League competitive season, which means along with that is a brand new battle pass that will be coming out very, very soon. And along with it, another. Oh yeah, you're correct. It is a Rocket Pass. Epic. Why do you do this? Putting all of the passes into the games, then changing the names of them. To be honest, Rocket Pass rolls off the tongue. But so will the next season as well. And with the next season coming up very, very soon, will be another episode here of the Rocket League show for esports.net. Once again, my name is Oliver Bastion, alongside by none other than Pyro J. We will see you guys in the next season of Rocket League. Have a good one.